Masechet Baba Batra, Daf, Kof Yod Aleph. The next part of the Mishnah says, Vaish et imo, a man inherits from his mother. If someone's mother dies, then the husband does inherit, but let's say they're divorced or the husband has died, then the son will inherit from his mother. Question is, Minaha nemile, how do we know that this is true? What is the source? What we're actually going to be talking about right now is not simply the source that a son inherits, but also how do we know that a daughter will inherit from a mother? And if indeed a daughter does inherit from the mother, is it the same order as with a father dying? When a man dies, then first his sons inherit everything, and only if he has no sons, then the daughters will inherit everything. But you never have a case where the son and the daughter will share equally. It's son and then daughter. Is the same true for a woman dying? Does it also go to the son first and then the daughter after? Or maybe when a woman dies, maybe it's different. Maybe they divide equally, or maybe the daughter gets it first. Furthermore, we're going to discuss what about the law of firstborn gets double. That certainly applies when a man dies. His firstborn gets double. But what about when a mother dies? Does her firstborn also get double? Okay, so we're going to quote a baraita. V'chol bat yoreshet nachala mimatot בני ישראל, האח בת יורשת שני מטות, אלא זו שאביה משבט אחד ואימה משבט אחר, ומתו וירשתן. So we quote a pasuk that we did mention yesterday, and this is at the end of Bemidbar, the second scene regarding Benot Selofchad, says, v'chol bat yoreshet nachala mimatot bnei Israel. Anytime you have a daughter who inherits something, that would be a case where there are no sons and the daughter inherits. But look, it says if she inherits from multiple matot, this is in plural, she inherits from tribes of Israel. A simple reading means she inherits from one of the tribes. She's a part of some tribe. So the point of this whole pasuk is that she has to marry within that tribe eventually when she does get married, so that the portion that she is inheriting will remain within that tribe. That's the idea. So every daughter among the Israelite tribes who inherits a share must become the wife of someone from a clan of her father's tribe, not only from the same tribe, but from that clan, in order that every Israelite heir may keep an ancestral share. So that's the idea. So mimatot simply can mean from one of the matot, whichever she belongs to. But this Darasha is going to focus on that plural and say, how can it be that a daughter will inherit from two different tribes? Oh, it must be that we're talking about a daughter whose father is from one tribe and his mother is from a different tribe, and both of them die, and then she inherits from both of them. So let's say the father dies first, okay, and there's no sons, so she inherits from the father. Now, the mother has her own property, so she has her own assets that she brought into the marriage or acquired sometime along the way. Now, when she dies, who's going to get it? Well, I have obviously the daughter, because it says the daughter will inherit, and she inherits from both tribes. That means from her father and from her mother. Good. So far what we've proven is that a daughter can inherit from her mother. Now we ask, ve'en li ela bat ben minayin. So far you proved that a daughter can inherit from a woman. But how do you know that a son can inherit from his mother? Amarta kal vachomer uma bat shehura kocha b'nichsei ha'av yipa kocha b'nichsei ha'em ben sheyipa kocho b'nichsei ha'av enodin sheyipa kocho b'nichsei ha'em. We're going to learn it from a kal vachomer. If regarding a daughter who is lower level, she has less power regarding her father's assets, and yet she has a lot of power regarding her mother's inheritance. So a son who has more power regarding his father's assets, all the more so, he should have more power regarding his mother's. In other words, so far we've established only that a daughter can inherit from the mother. But we have another halakha that we already proved before, that when a father dies, first the son goes to the son, then it goes to the daughter. So you see there's precedence for a son and then a daughter with regard to the inheritance from a father. The son is more powerful than the daughter. So since we have that a son is greater than a daughter when it comes to a father dying, so that means sons are more powerful than daughters. So then we apply that back here and we say if a daughter inherits from the mother, then all the more so a son who's more powerful when it comes to a father dying, so all the more so we should apply that for the mother dying also. If a daughter inherits, which you just proved, then all the more so a son will inherit. So it's a kal vachomer. That's one step. Now here's the controversial next step. וממקום שבאת, מה להלן בן קודם לבת, אף כאן בן קודם לבת. And furthermore, you can derive something else from the place that you came from. That's the source of the kal vachomer is when a father dies. That just like there, not only can a son inherit, but the son inherits first before a daughter. So too, here, where a mother dies, the son will inherit first before the daughter. So now, we started off with knowing only that the daughter inherits. How do you know a son? Okay, we'll learn kal vachomer because in other places a son is more powerful than a daughter. So to here, we're going to bring that over as well, and not only learn from the kal vachomer that a son can inherit, but even that a son inherits first when the mother dies, just like when the father dies. Now, this second step is controversial because you're building an extra level on top of a kal vachomer, and this is called dayo, which is what we're about to say. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yosef Ameru, Mishum Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav. These two sages say in the name of Rabbi Zechariah ben הקצב, אחד הבן ואחד הבת שווים בנכסי האם, מה טעמה דיו לבא מן הדין להיות כנידון. Rabbi Zechariah ben הקצב says that a son and a daughter share an inheritance equally when a mother dies. Very interesting, right? So here we have a case where sons and daughters share equally when the mother dies. Why do they say that? Because they apply a principle of dayo. It's enough when you learn something from a kal vachomer that the target of the kal vachomer cannot be more than the source that you learned it from. An example of this would be if you have a weak person and a strong person. I say, look, this weak person can lift 50 pounds. Well, if the weak person can lift 50 pounds, then kal vachomer, the strong person, can lift 100 pounds. That's not necessarily true, right? You don't know that. What you can say is, if the weak person can lift 50 pounds, then the strong person certainly can lift 50 pounds, right? That's a proper kal vachomer. That's dayo. All we know to the target is what is already in the source. That's all you can know for sure. Now you're going to add more? Well, maybe the strong person can lift 100, maybe 200, maybe 500, but how far are you going to go? So we cannot add more to the target of the kal vachomer than is in the source. And so, this is what we say, this is what Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav says in this case also. Listen, we know that a daughter can inherit. That's in the pasuk. Well, we derived it from the pasuk, from the word matot, which is in plural. Good. So we know that a daughter can inherit from the mother for sure. Now, you want to bring kal vachomer. Good. And you say, look, a son is stronger than a daughter. Okay, well then if a daughter inherits, then surely a son inherits also. That's it. That's all you can learn. That the son is as strong, at least as strong as the daughter. So that means when a mother dies, then the daughter and the son will share equally in the inheritance. That's all I can learn. I cannot learn that more than that. That would be like saying that the strong guy can lift 200 pounds, since the weak guy can lift 50 pounds. No, you can't go beyond 2 steps in the kal vachomer, only one. So therefore, according to Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav, he disagrees with this last step. So this is a fundamental machloket. According to the Tanakh Kama here, whether a father or mother dies, a son inherits first, exclusively. Only if there's no son, then the daughter inherits. But according to Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav, there's a difference between a father and mother. When a father dies, then it goes to the son first. If there's no son, only then it goes to the daughter. But when a woman dies, then the sons and daughters share equally. Now we ask, Tanakh Kama la darish dayo v'hadayo deoraitahu. Are you telling me that Tanakh Kama denies the basic concept of dayo? He thinks you can make a kal vachomer and even go an extra step in the kal vachomer. After all, the principle of dayo is actually in the Torah. There is an example of a kal vachomer and a dayo in the Torah, the Tanya. Midin kal vachomer אומר כיצד. ויאמר השם אל משה, ואביה ירוק ירק בפניה, הלא תקלם 7 ימים. קל וחומר לשכינה 14, אלא דיו לבא מן הדין להיות כנידון. We see that when Miriam complained about her brother, about Moshe, and Hashem gets angry at her, and now she has to be banished and be outside the camp for 7 days. And the reasoning is explained in the pasuk itself. Hashem told Moshe, if a father would spit in the face of a daughter, this was a thing that back then, if a father got very angry and officially shamed the daughter by spitting in her face, so she would have to hide in shame for 7 days. That was a common custom. Now, since we know that custom, and Hashem is telling Moshe, right, after all, even a father who gets angry at a daughter, the punishment would be for 7 days. So you might think that, oh, well, kal vachomer, all the more so, if Shekhinah gets angry at a person, then the banishment should be even longer, twice as long, at least, right? At least twice as long. So you should say 14 days. But it doesn't say that. It says instead that Miriam was banished for 7 days. Why? Because dayo, it's sufficient for that which you derive from a kal vachomer to be like the source. And just like here, the source was a father gets angry, then 7 days. That's it. You can only learn 7 days. You cannot add more to that. And so too, in this case, we're comparing a son to a daughter. So we know a daughter can inherit. So now you want to say, oh, well, I just learned from a kal vachomer that a son can inherit. Okay, fine. So now you can learn that a son can inherit like a daughter. Now you want to add an extra step that, well, since it's more powerful somewhere else, that's going to be more powerful here also. No, now you're adding more than is the source of the kal vachomer, which is the daughter herself. That's how we know that any child can inherit from the mother is from the daughter. So you can't bring a kal vachomer to make the son stronger than the daughter. It should be dayo, and that's it. So therefore, dayo is a fundamental principle in the Torah that everybody has to agree with. So what about Tanakama? How come they deny dayo and they say, oh, you know what? The son is stronger somewhere else. We're going to make the son stronger here too. How could they do this? And the answer is Ba'alma darish dayo. V'shana hachad amar kera mi matot makish mate ha'em lemate ha'av. Ma mate ha'av ben kodem lebat af mate ha'em ben kodem lebat. Oh, in general, you're right. Tanakama agrees with dayo. And if it was just a kal vachomer, they would not be able to derive the law here that a son inherits first before a daughter when the mother dies. But here is a different case because we, in addition to a kal vachomer, we have a hekesh. The pasuk says mi matot, plural. And so it's comparing the tribe of the mother to the tribe of the father and saying that inheritance law is the same in both. So just like regarding the tribe of the father, when the father dies and his inheritance goes to the children, then it goes to the son exclusively first, and only if there's no son, it goes to a daughter. So too, regarding the tribe of the mother, any inheritance that she has and that she owns when she dies, then it goes to her children, and there also it goes to a son exclusively, and only afterwards to a daughter. So we're not actually learning this from a kal vachomer, we're learning it from the word matot, which is comparing the two laws. So we have a kal vachomer, and built on the kal vachomer is a hekesh. So that's how we learn it. In fact, it's not from the dayo principle. Rav Nitai sabad leme'ebad obada k'Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. Amar leShemuel kiman k'Zechariah afes Zechariah. Now we have a few cases that were in this regard. Rav Nitai, a case came before him where a mother died and then there were sons and daughters, and he was going to follow Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav and give the sons and daughters equal shares. But then Shemuel told Rav Nitai, who are you following? Zechariah? Zechariah is 0, not him himself, meaning his opinion. His opinion is worth 0. You cannot follow that as a halacha. He said that's true, but you can't follow it. Rabbi Tabla abad obada k'Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. Amar le Rav Nachman, mai hai? Amar le damar Rav Chinena bar Shelamya mishemeh derav halacha k'Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. So one time, Rabbi Tabla, he had a case that came before him where a mother died, and he followed Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav, and he gave the daughters and sons equally. And Rav Nachman says, what are you doing? Why are you following that Rabbi Zechariah's halacha? And Rabbi Tabla says, because Rabbi Chinena, the son of Shelamya, said in in the name of Rav, the halacha follows Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. So I have a precedent that Rav said that the halacha follows him. Amar lezil hadar bach v'ila mapikna lach Rav Chinena bar Shilamya me'unech. Rav Nachman told Rabbi Tabla, you better change your mind, change your verdict on this. It's wrong. And if you don't change your verdict, then I'm going to pull Rabbi Chinena bar Shilamya out of your ear. That's who you heard this from, right? You heard from Rabbi Chinena bar Shilamya in the name of Rav. The halacha follows Rabbi Zechariah. I'm going to pull that out of your ear. Okay, this is some kind of threat of a punishment, either a beating, lashes, or excommunication, meaning I'm going to forcibly pull that idea out of your ear, that viewpoint, because it's wrong, you're not allowed to follow it, and even though you heard some tradition in the name of Rav, who told you that? Okay, this is not a reliable tradition, this is not a valid halachic ruling, and so you better change your mind. Rav Huna bar Chiya sabar lemebad obada Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav Amar le Rav Nachman my hai. And now another story. Rav Huna, the son of Chiya, he was also, a case came before him and he was going to follow Rabbi Zechariah and give equal shares to the daughters and the sons. It seems that this happened often, and there must have been some popular pressure from the daughters who were suing and said, well, we deserve a part, Liz is our mother. And so these rabbis were thinking about deciding a verdict in accordance with Rabbi Zechariah. And then Amar Rav Nachman, my hai Rav Nachman again, as the same in the last story, says, what are you doing? De Amar Lea, De Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, halacha Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. So this Rav Huna bar Chiya says that I heard from a different Rav Huna, the primary Rav Huna, the student of Rav, who said in the name of Rav, the halacha follows Zechariah ben Akasav. This is now another tradition, also in the name of Rav. Rav definitely seemed to say that we follow that as the halacha. Amar le, eshlach le. So Rav Nachman says, oh well, should I send a message to Rav Huna to double check? Right? I'm going to ask him myself if he really heard from Rav that the halacha follows Zechariah ben Akasav. Should I go and ask him? And Rav Huna bar Chiya, ichsif, he was embarrassed, meaning he didn't really hear a definite statement that Rav Huna really said this name of Rav. Maybe he said something, but he changed his mind, or maybe he just hinted that, you know what, it makes some sense, but he didn't say it definitively. And therefore Rav Huna bar Chiya knew that if someone would go and ask Rav Huna, did you really say that? He would not admit it. And so he was quoting something that was somewhat of a misquote. Amar le hashtaki nach nafshed Rav Huna itrisat lekibli. And Rav Nachman said, imagine if Rav Huna was not alive. If he had died, then you would be so brazen to say this in front of me. And because if he died, then we wouldn't be able to check. And you would just say, oh, I heard it. Rav Huna told me that Rav said this. And you just say that brazenly. And since I wouldn't be able to check, you could get away with it. It's a good thing he's alive. Now I can go and check with him. This is a big problem. After a great sage dies, then people quote him and saying this and that. Oh yeah, he told me once, he told that person once. But if they didn't write it down, if it's not recorded, then it's very difficult to check whether they said that exactly, or said it in a certain situation, or said it in a kind of way. So it's good to double check while the person is alive. And so you see a second story with Rav Nachman saying, hey, you can't follow Rabbi Zechariah, and you cannot use that as a precedent or a ruling. V'yu keman sebara. And Rav Nachman himself, who was he following that he went against all these other rabbis and said, you can't follow that as halacha? Ki had Rav Ushmuel damre tarvahu en halacha Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. He was following opinions of both Rav and Shemuel, who both said that halacha is not like Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. So you see there definitely are contradictory traditions about what Rav said. But anyway, Rav Nachman had a tradition that Rav and Shemuel both said, we do not follow Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. Sons and daughters do not inherit equally from a mother. Rather, the sons get first, not only if the father dies, but also if the mother dies. Mistamich ve'azil Rabbi Anai akitva de Rabbi Simlai shema'eh. So Rabbi Anai, who was elderly and it was hard for him to walk, and his eyes grew dim. So he was leaning on the shoulder of Rabbi Simlai, his assistant, so that he could guide him and walk in the correct direction. Now, while they were walking, another sage, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah, was either the grandson or the great-great-grandson of the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi who authored the Mishnah, is a later generation, was coming and from the other direction towards them. Amale bar enashtata lekabir lekiblana hu yaeh vegute yaeh. So Rabbi Simlai, the attendant, told the elder Rabbi Yanai that this person who is coming towards us is handsome and his cloak is handsome, meaning he is a very fine person. A cloak, it doesn't just mean that he's dressed well. Back then, a sage would have a nice cloak that represented his stature. So he's saying, really, by using a metaphor of how he looks and his clothing, that he is a great sage that is coming towards you. Since he couldn't see, Rabbi Yanai wouldn't know that, so Rabbi Simlai is giving him a heads up. And so, when they came close, he couldn't see very much, but Rabbi Yanai felt his clothing, and he said, this cloth that you're wearing would be the same measurement as sackcloth. Now, the minimum measurement for something to receive impurity is different for different things. If it's very fine quality, then smaller. For sackcloth, which is not fine quality, it's rough and thick, it's a bigger measurement. So he's using halachic terminology to say, this cloak is not made out of fine material. This is not made out of nice silk. This is sackcloth, which is cheap and itchy and thick and rough. In other words, he's implying that this is not such a great sage. His knowledge and his character are not of the highest quality, so he disagrees with the estimation of Rabbi Simlai. And now we're going to have a conversation in halacha. Be'amineh. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah, right, the one who's wearing this cloak, asks Rabbi Yanai a question. Minayin leben shekodem lebat b'nichsei ha'em. How do you know that a son will inherit first before a daughter when a mother dies? Amar dichtib matot. And Rabbi Yanai says immediately, matot, what we just said. Makish matei ha'em le matei ha'av. Ma matei ha'av? Ben kodem lebat, af matei ha'em ben kodem labat. That we are making an analogy between the tribe of the mother and the tribe of the father. Just like regarding the tribe of the father, any inheritance that he receives as part of his tribe, when he dies, the son inherits first and only then the daughter. So too, the same thing is with the mother. Any inheritance that she has, when she dies, the son comes first and then the daughter, which is what we had said earlier. Amar le, ima matei ha'av bechor notel pi shanayim, af matei ha'em bechor notel pi shanayim. And so now, the Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah, he seems to have anticipated that Rabbi Yanai would answer that. So he has a follow-up question that seems like a pretty good question. And he says, well, if you're going to compare the two, then you should apply also the law of firstborn. That just like when a father dies, the firstborn son gets a double portion. So too, do you think that when a mother dies, and there are multiple sons, that the oldest son, the firstborn son, should also get a double portion? Would you apply the law of Bechor also to when a mother dies? Amar le lishma'eh, God let den sabeh lemelaf. And then Rabbi Yanai told his attendant Rabbi Simlai, get me out of here. This person does not know how to learn. In other words, this was a dumb question. Why does he ask me such simple questions? Look, he's just challenging me. He doesn't know anything. It's not worth my time to sit here and explain it to him. So not only is he wearing sackcloth, he is not even worth discussing. Go learn basic things on your own. You don't come to the great rabbi and ask him a basic law. Now we ask, the Gemara says, oh, well, what is the reason why the law of firstborn does not apply when a mother dies? Amar Abaye, Amar Kera, Bechol asher yimaseh lo velo la. Pasuk in Devarim says that the firstborn, he gets a double portion of all that he has, everything that he, meaning he, the male, the father, only everything that the father has, the firstborn gets double. Lo him, but not her, not everything that the mother has. So we learn from that law and not la. Okay, so that's a derivation. But actually, it's not very simple at all because we're going to ask a bunch of questions. Ve'ema hanemile bachur shenasa almana, ava bachur shenasa betula hachiname de shakil. The Gemara asks, perhaps this drasha that says that when a mother dies, the firstborn does not get double portion, perhaps that only applies in a particular case where a bachelor marries a widow and she has children already from a previous marriage. And then they get married and they have children of their own and they have a son who's a firstborn son, but that's a firstborn to the father, but not a firstborn to the mother. So in that case, it makes sense that when eventually that mother dies, then the firstborn of their joint marriage is not going to get a double portion of his mother because he is not the firstborn of his mother. So maybe that's the particular case where this law says that only when the father dies, that firstborn gets double, but not when his mother dies because she already had children and he's not a firstborn from the mother. Maybe that pasuk only applies to that case. But let's say it's a first marriage for both of them, and none of them have prior children. So a bachelor that marries a betula, and this is a firstborn of both of them, maybe indeed that when the father dies, the firstborn gets double, and then when the mother dies, then maybe, and she has her own property, then maybe the firstborn also will get double. So we need another derivation for that case. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Amar Kera Reshit ono velo ona. And so that same pasuk has another phrase that says Reshit ono, the fruits of his strength, the first fruits of his strength. And strength means from his seed, the first child that he has. So it says ono in masculine and not ona and not her first strength. So that means that only his firstborn gets double and not her firstborn. All right, that seems like a good derivation. The problem is that we need this derivation for another law. Hahu mibaya leba achar nefalim deleve bechor nachala mi shelibo dave alav yasazeh she'en libo dave alav. I need that pasuk to teach me another law about a son who's born after some miscarriages, that even though there were previous children, and that would mean for the law of pidyon haben, for example, that you don't do pidyon haben since there were miscarriages before or non-viable children that didn't live long, and so because she already had miscarriages, the next one that does live and lives till 30 days, you don't do a pidyon haben because it's not the first peterechem, it's not the first to emerge from the womb. So it's not a bechor regarding pidyon haben. However, when it comes to inheritance, even though there were miscarriages or non-viable newborns before this child, nevertheless, we ignore them. And this child does get a double portion. Why? Because Reshit Ono means the child that the father will be pained about if the child dies. Whereas if it's a miscarriage or a non-viable child, although it's sad, the father isn't as much pained about it. Whereas if it's a viable child, then the father would be very pained if that child would die. And that's why the law of firstborn inheritance that gets double is dependent on that pain factor, the attachment of the father to that child. And so we already need this pasuk to teach me that firstborn is called the first viable son is a firstborn, even if there were miscarriages before. So we can't use that pasuk. We need another pasuk to teach me this law. Imken lema keraki hu reshit on my ono shma mina tarte. Oh, we can learn it from the same word as this one. It says ono. It could have said reshit on. So, and that would have taught me already this law. The first of his strength, the first of his pain. That I already know the law regarding the previous miscarriages or stillbirths. So I would know that just from on. Ono with the extra vav comes to teach me this law also. That if it's a first marriage for both of them, then still only when the father dies does the firstborn get double, and not when the mother dies. Okay, but we're not done yet. Ve'akate ema hanemile almon shenasa betula, aval bachur shenasa betula hachinami de shakil. But still, even with this derasha from Ono, I can argue and say, I need this derasha for the following particular case of where you have a widower. He has children from a prior marriage, and he marries a betula, and now this couple has children of their own. I would need that derasha to teach me that those children that this couple has together, let's say they have a firstborn son, will not get a double inheritance for when the father dies, because the father already had children from a previous marriage, and if he had a son first from a previous marriage, that son will get his inheritance. And even though this child is the firstborn from the mother, that doesn't matter. It has to be the firstborn from the father. And that's why I would need that letter. Oh no, it has to be his firstborn. So I already need that derasha for a different reason, but I still don't know that if a man and a woman who are both, they have their first marriage, maybe in that case, since it's a firstborn for both the mother and the father, maybe when the mother dies, then the firstborn son will inherit a double portion. So you haven't solved the problem yet. Ela amar Rava amar kera lo mishpata bechora. Mishpata bechora laish velo mishpata bechora laisha. Rava explains in that same pasuk is another phrase that says, to him goes the right of the firstborn, and that means that the right of the firstborn goes to the man, and it does not go to the woman. Now, literally in the pasuk, the right of the firstborn is his. His is really about the son, who the firstborn son. But we're learning here that it's the entire law of firstborn applies to a man, but does not apply to a woman, meaning it applies when a father dies, the firstborn gets double, but not when a mother dies, does not get double. So we took a while to explain this, but to the Biyanai, this was so simple that he rejected the Biyudan Nesiyah and said, he's not even worth teaching. Look, he thinks he's asking me a tough question. This is an easy one. Okay, what is easy for him could be difficult for us. We now begin the discussion of the next part of the Mishnah, Va'ish et ishto, that says that a husband inherits from his wife. When a wife dies, then it goes first to the husband if they're still married and he's still alive. Minahane mileh. What's the source? There's no explicit pasuk about this. We're going back to this pasuk that says that you give the inheritance to she'ero. She'ero means flesh, and so what's closer to a person than his wife? So his wife, the nachala, the inheritance of his wife, will go to the husband. Just from that word, we can learn it. But we ask, Yachol af hi tirashenu. Now, if it's true that a husband and wife are like flesh, they're like one flesh, ve'ule basar echad, so then it should work both ways. And that would mean that when a man dies, then the first in line should be the wife. But we learned in the Mishnah that a wife never inherits, not even down the line. A wife never inherits from the husband. But why shouldn't it be the same way that just like a husband inherits the wife, so too a wife should inherit from the husband? Talmud Omar v'yarash ota hu yoresh ota ve'en hi yoreshet oto. Because later on in that same pasuk it says, the inheritance will go to She'ero HaKarov Elav, who's close to him, Mishpachto, from his family, and then it says V'yarash Otah. Now, a literal meaning is, and he will inherit it. Otah is referring to the Nachala, which is a feminine noun. That's why it says Otah. But we're reading it somewhat out of context and saying V'yarash Otah, that the husband will inherit her, the wife, and that goes that way, but not the other way around. Now you notice that She'ero is already far removed from Yarash Otah. There's 3 words in between. So that's what we're going to ask about next. The pasuk doesn't read like that. How can you just take words that are from different places in the pasuk and smash them together? Amar Abaye terishachi untatemet nachalato lakarov elav she'ero v'yarash otah. You know what? You can splice the pasuk up differently. Just move the words around a little, and you say untatemet nachalato lakarov elav. Give the inheritance to whoever is the most closely related to him, and then take the word she'ero and move it over. She'ero v'yarash otah. So we can take the word she'ero, we'll take off the lamed, and move it to she'ero v'yarash otah. And nachalato is le hakarov. So you take the lamed and you put it on the hakarov, you put lakarov, and then you have all the words together. She'ero, the one who is flesh, his flesh, meaning his wife, he inherits her, and not the other way around, she does not inherit him. All right, if you're confused about this, then so is Rava. Amar Rava, sakina charifa, mafseka kira'eh. Rava says, you're going to take a sharp knife and cut the verse. How can you do that? You just cut it, move words around, and like that, in such a haphazard way. Ela amar Rava, hachika amar. So Rava says, no, you have to do it this way. Untatem et nachalat she'ero lo, kasabar gor'in umosifin vedorshin. So Rava also is going to use the principle of removing and adding and adding explanation, but in a more subtle way. You just have to move a little bit around. Untatem et nachalat she'ero lo. So back at the pasuk, you would say like this: Untatem et nachalat. So you take nachalat, you see the vav, remove that, and take the lamed and remove that also. Now we have an extra vav and lamed, so remove those and put them together. Switch the order, you get the word law, and move that till after the word. So you're not splicing so much, just more subtle, just a little shift, and you get untatem et nachalat she'ero lo. You give the inheritance of his close flesh, meaning his wife, to him, and not the other way around. Her close flesh will not go to her, and so we can use this slightly more subtle rearrangement of just letters and not entire words, and learn the derasha this way. And now we have another Tana that learns it from other sources. The Tanya, ve'yarash ota melamed shabal yoresh et ishto dibre Rabbi Akiba. Rabbi Akiba, similar to the first opinion above, but actually doesn't use she'ero, just the words v'yarash ota, which again we still said in Peshat is talking about he will inherit it, but the word it could also refer to her, the wife, and it says he, the husband, will inherit her. So there you go. That's how you know that the husband inherits the wife. That's the opinion of Rabbi Akiba. And Rabbi Ishmael will just begin his opinion. Rabbi Ishmael omer eno sarich, harehu omer v'chol bat yoreshet nachala mimatot bnei Israel le'echad mimishpachat v'gomer pasabata Baal hakatub medaber. The pasuk says that any time that a daughter inherits from some of the tribes of Israel, so she has to marry into that very same tribe, that very same clan, so that the inheritance will not move from one place to another. So this is talking about an inheritance that will shift over by means of a husband. We're talking about a husband and wife that are from two different shivatim. And then the wife dies and it goes to the husband. Now, how do you know that when a wife dies, it goes to the husband? It has to be, because that's the basis of this entire law. Ve'omer ve'lo tisob nachala d'bnei Yisrael mimateh el mateh. Ve'omer ve'lo tisob nachala mimateh lemateh acher. There's two different Pesukim that say the same problem. We are worried that when a woman inherits land, because she's the only daughter, so now she inherited from her tribe, and then she marries someone from a different tribe, what will happen? When she dies, then the husband will inherit her, and then that land will shift from one tribe to another tribe, and then the original inheritance of that entire tribe will be lost. And so why would you worry about that? Only because, in general, a husband inherits from his wife. So if they're from the same tribe, then it's no problem. He can inherit her. There's not a problem unless she herself inherited from her family, if she was an only daughter. And then when she dies, the husband will take it. If the husband never was not an inheritor of his wife, then you wouldn't have this whole problem, because that would mean when she dies, then her inheritance would go back to her family. If it went back to her family, then you wouldn't need to have this limitation that she can only marry someone from the same tribe. You wouldn't have that problem. She can marry anybody from any tribe, and when she dies, the inheritance that she got from her father, because she was an only daughter, daughter will go back to her father's house. So there wouldn't be a problem. This whole law at the end of Bimidbar only makes sense if you assume that a husband inherits from his wife. And so Rabbi Ishmael doesn't have to rely on these extra words are out of place. The word la really referring to the wife and not the object of the nachala. Rabbi Ishmael, although you have to look at the context and understand the story, is actually a much more simple peshat way of deriving this law. And we'll see more about Rabbi Ishmael and this baraita on the next daf. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.